How do I stand out when there's so much competition around me? That is a question that I received recently that I'm not unfamiliar with. When I first started my video production company 18 years ago, I struggled to make $20,000 a year. And a big reason for that is because I struggled to stand out. I struggled to show potential clients what made me different from any other videographer. And by the way, I don't consider myself a videographer. I don't even allow my clients to call me a videographer. But that's not the point of this conversation. How do you stand out? First, you have to realize that there isn't any other competition. There is only one you. Only you can do the work that you're doing in the way that you do it. Only you could lead your team in the way that you're leading your team. But that's easier said than done. How do you build up that confidence? How do you communicate what makes you different, or who you are, or what you do that is different from the next person that might have the same title as you have? One of the easiest ways to stand out is by getting client testimonials. And not just the testimonials that says how great it is to work with you. I mean getting client stories. Stories of what the experience was like when they worked with you. Stories of how you showed up differently. Stories of how you brought value to their life that they weren't even expecting. At the very end of this conversation, I'm gonna show you one of my client's client that I interviewed. And I asked her one question. And that question brought tears to her eyes.
Aw, man, Jude, you gonna mess up my makeup.
But before we get to that, I am gonna walk you through how to get powerful client stories. Our conversation today is gonna be very simple. I'm gonna share with you how to craft powerful client stories that make you money. But most importantly, I'm gonna show you how to make your competition irrelevant. If you were with me in the last conversation, I broke down my most effective strategies for following up. I walked you through the game of follow-up. One of the things that I talked about is creative ways to follow up. Well, getting client testimonials or client stories can be an asset that you use to follow up with leads, and it'll help you close deals a lot faster. Now, why is that? Client stories are social proof. And social proof is one of the most powerful forms of marketing. When you go on Amazon and you look at the reviews, you're not just looking at the reviews of people who are saying great things about the product. You're trying to figure out, is this product going to solve the problem that you have? Or is it gonna come with everything that you want from the product? Same way when you look up going to a restaurant. You're looking at the reviews and you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best dish that this restaurant has? Is there any food that I can eat that's there? Maybe I have diet restrictions. Is there any food that I would really like that's there? In the same way, potential clients are thinking to themselves, why should I work with you versus any and every other option available to me? And that really boils down to why you. When you get your clients talking about why you, when you get them sharing the experience that they had, what often happens, if you do it right, what often happens is that clients will share things that you didn't even know were valuable to them. Like you might have heard them say one or two things in passing, and they told you how much they've enjoyed the experience, but when you really start to ask the questions, like specific questions, you'd be surprised as to what your client reveals about working with you. Most recently, I was in Orlando filming a brand video series for my clients, Chris and Bree, from Unity Custom Builders. And as part of what we were filming, I interviewed 4 of their clients to tell me about the experience of working with Chris and Bree. I am going to use those interviews as examples to share with you the 3 elements that make powerful client stories. The first element that makes up a powerful client story, having the right context. When I mention context, I'm not talking about the specifics of the project, like what was the problem that you were trying to solve. Instead, I'm talking about the who. Who matters more than what? When you share the right context, you immediately create that connection with the potential client that makes them feel like they can trust you because you've worked with someone just like them. Everyone believes their situation is unique. Okay, I get this works, but will this work for me? And so when you share in context that you have worked with someone just like them, then they're more inclined to believe, oh, this will actually work for me too. Let's look at 2 quick examples of Unity Custom Builders clients. That's the project that I mentioned to you I worked on in Orlando. Let's look at their clients. I'm gonna show you Lauren and Mark. Pay attention to the similarities, but also the differences of who they are and how they talk about who they are.
I mean, this is our forever home. So when we bought the house, that was Aaron and I's vision, was we want to go all in and make sure that it is exactly what we want because we want to be here for forever. And of course, we were thinking of our family and having little kids and wanting them to grow up and have their friends here. We had one boy at the time, and I was actually very pregnant with our second throughout this whole renovation. So it was very important that they stayed on schedule.
I'm an entrepreneur. I own a number of different businesses, primarily in the healthcare space. I wanted someone who does high-end work, right? That's in keeping with the aesthetic and the level of quality that matters to me. And I would call myself discerning. Some might call me extremely picky, but that's okay, right? Like, this is my house, and I want it to look a certain way, and I'm gonna have to stare at it over years.
Now, if you're a picky person, or discerning, as Mark puts it, you're gonna resonate with Mark, and you're gonna understand and believe him when he says, hey, these people did a great job. You're gonna believe him because you also relate to him and you connect with him when he tells you, I have to live in this house for the next few years. So I wanna make sure it looks exactly how I want it to look. And if that's important to you, you're gonna resonate with him. Now, in the case of Lauren, when Lauren tells you she's the mother of two very young kids and doesn't have the time to undertake a full renovation, again, when she tells you Chris and Bree did an excellent job, you're gonna believe her more because you resonate with her more. When you share the right context, the kind of clients that you've worked with, you're inviting your potential clients into a scenario that they recognize. What you're saying to them is that I understand you. I understand your world. I understand your challenges. I understand your situation because I've worked with people just like you. And what's beautiful about that is you don't have to say it with your own words that I understand you. They get to see it and believe it on their own. I'm never trying to convince someone to work with me. I am guiding them to see that they're making the right decision for themselves in choosing to work with me. If I have to convince you, we're already starting off on the wrong foot. But if you come to that conclusion on your own, you will believe in the decision that you've made. No buyer's remorse or micromanaging. The second element for creating powerful client stories is contrast. When it comes to the contrast, you're focusing on the before and the after. You're literally contrasting between the two. What was it like before they started working with you, and what was it like after the project was completed? Now, the before can be a number of different things. The before can be what other things they tried or other people they tried to work with. Before could be the actual journey of working through the project. What challenges came up and how did you help solve those challenges? The after is going to be something great. We know that. But I can only appreciate the after if I understand what came before the after. And so that's why with contrast, it's so critical to not just talk about the after or talk about how amazing it was. It's to talk about what led to it being amazing. The fact that they had so much pain or so much problems in the beginning and how you helped solve it. Now, the before could also be, what are the small things that you do that is different and unique? Your clients can speak to that. They can share the small things that they value. Value isn't just the finished product. Value isn't just the return on investment. The value is the entire experience, because someone could finish the project and the experience of finishing that project was hell. So that's why you want to focus on both the before and the after in contrast. First, you want to set up the right context. Who is this person that you worked with? But then the contrast. What was this journey like? What was it like before and what was it like after? Listen to how Mark explains what it was like for him before and then after.
When I bought this house, I did a 7-month-long renovation before I moved into it with another contractor. I went through all of the strife that was, not because the project was difficult necessarily, but because the contractor was extremely difficult to work with, unresponsive, didn't want to address issues, did things completely wrong out of plan, and then when it was brought to their attention, it was like they were upset that it was going to cost them something to fix it, even though it was completely their fault. Chris's response is always immediately, I'll have someone there tomorrow to take a look at it, and we'll get it right. And so, when you have someone that you work with that has that level of care, like they care about it, the quality of the work as much as you care about the quality of the work that you're going to look at every day for the next however many years. That's just a huge selling point that I don't think we find very often with contractors.
In the beginning with context, You started by building trust. With contrast, you not only are building trust, but you're showing them that not only do you understand their world, their problems, their situations, their hesitations, but you successfully overcame those challenges with other clients. And one of the secrets to contrast is that it justifies your premium pricing. As I've heard one client say it before, you get it right the first time, and people will pay for you to get it right the first time. If your client has tried other solutions and have had the headache banging their head up against the wall with other solutions, then they're going to appreciate and be okay with the fact that you may charge a little bit more, but it's worth the experience. All right, the third and final element that makes a powerful client story is consequence. The best way to explain consequence boils down to one question that almost always gets an emotional response. Can you imagine what life would be like without X? In the case of Unity, can you imagine what life would be like without Chris or Bree? I've used this question so many times when I'm interviewing my client's client, and it almost always gets an emotional reaction. And I don't mean just emotional in the sense of the person cries. I mean emotional as in there's just an animated response. When you ask this question, what you're really saying is not just what life would be like if that person didn't work with you. What you're really displaying is the deeper transformation that you bring that's beyond the scope of the project. It's a deeper transformation. It's a deeper value than simply getting the finished product. You are delivering a multi-dimensional experience, and it's not just you saying it, it's your client saying it, which makes it more believable. I want to show you a few examples of how people answer this question. One with Chris and Breeze, but there's one at the end that I really want you to see how this person takes the time to really think about what would life be like without that person. Could you imagine a life without Chris?
No, absolutely not. We finished our renovation almost 2 years ago, and I still see Chris probably on a weekly basis. So something breaks, something happens.
Considering you had so many challenges and you went through so many designers, what would have happened if you didn't find Grace Blue? Can you imagine that?
No. No. I mean, building a house is really stressful. It's expensive, it's time consuming. There's so many details and so many decisions you have to make.
Our life is made up of the decisions we make. You ever think about not making the decision to work with Darnell? What your life would have looked like?
Oh man, Jude, you gonna mess up my makeup. That's not okay. I don't even have tissue. No, I don't think about that. I mean, my life has changed so much as a result of that decision. When you are the leader in your family, when you're already doing well, but it's not well enough, like you know that it looks good to everybody on the outside, but you know on the inside there's more in you, is hard. And so to have found a place and space that pulls me to my full potential, yeah, I can't imagine what, I don't want to imagine. There's no reason for me to imagine that. So I just think that's a dumb question. But yeah, no, I don't think about that.
If you look in the description box down below, I've left a link for you where you can download questions that you can ask when you're doing your client stories. So questions that you can ask for the context, the contrast, and the consequence. That way you can uncover the powerful stories that your clients have from working with you. I'm sitting on an airplane, sitting in first class, waiting for my flight to take off from San Diego, and I'm watching the people slowly board the plane. And as I'm watching people slowly board the plane, there's this one woman that as soon as she gets on, she leans over to the flight attendant standing at the front and she whispers something in her ear. The flight attendant no expression on her face. She goes into one of the small compartments and then comes back and hands the woman something. Now, I'm watching this whole covert operation take place, and so it's intrigued me. I'm a bit nosy, so I want to see what she handed her. As this woman is walking past me, I am laser focused on her hands. And what I notice is that the flight attendant hands her a seatbelt extension. That moment reminds me of a fitness instructor that I once heard give a talk years before this. And the fitness instructor is a fitness instructor for women who are over 40. Only women who are over 40. And she received one day a picture of an empty airplane. And in the text message, it says, "This is the very first time in my life that I am getting on an airplane." Remind you, she is over 40. She says, "This is the first time in my life I'm getting on an airplane and I don't have to ask for a seatbelt extension." You provide a powerful transformation for your clients, and maybe you don't know it. Maybe you don't understand the difference that you've made in their lives. But there is a unique way that you show up. There is a unique way that you go about delivering for your clients that must be documented so that you can help demonstrate what makes you unique. Take the time to capture powerful client stories, to capture who you've worked with, to capture what makes them unique and different, to capture how you are unique and different in the experience, and the consequence that could happen if they decide not to work with you. There is no one else like you. There is only one you. Your competition is irrelevant.